Hello there! Couple days ago we had an amazing opportunity to witness America return to space on board American rocket from American soil. The launch was absolutely flawless, but as Elon Musk once said, there is only one way for a rocket launch to go right, but 9,999 ways for it to go horribly wrong. And today we'll look at 7 most epic fails in rocket history, and we'll briefly talk about why they happened and what valuable lessons we learned from them. Let's go! Just a quick disclaimer, in this video we will not talk about incidents that resulted in loss of crew. I just don't think it would be appropriate considering the context of the video. I will make a video about these tragic flights someday, but in more respectable manner without goofing around. With that being said, let's go watch some rockets blow up! And we'll start from protagonist of our latest video, SpaceX, and their Amos 6 mission, which was supposed to take 5.5-ton Israeli satellite into geosynchronous orbit. Was supposed to. Before every launch, SpaceX conducts final checks on their Falcon 9s by pressurizing them and lighting up their engines for a couple seconds to see if everything performs phenomenal! And so was this time. Business as usual. Everything goes to plan until T-8 minutes when... Hey look, the payload fairing is still in there, maybe we can... Never mind. So what the hell happened there? Post-incident investigation tracked the issue to a weakness in liquid oxygen tank on the second stage, which when tested led to overpressurization or, as you wish, explosion of the composite overwrap pressure vessel. SpaceX learned their lesson and the COPV design was adjusted so it doesn't happen again. What's interesting, their customer, Spacecom, instead of money compensation for the lost satellite, chose a free ride on another Falcon 9 rocket for their Amos 17 satellite, which successfully launched on August 6, 2019, reaching nominal orbit.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
So I guess they didn't hold a grudge for that after all. On September 26, 1983, Soyuz 7K ST number 16L was preparing for launch to Soviet space station, Salyut 7, with 2 cosmonauts on board, Vladimir Titov and Gennady Strikalov. Just before liftoff, at T-90 seconds, one of the control valves allowed nitrogen gas used for pressurization to enter RP-1 turbopump of the Block B strap-on booster. As the pump began spinning up, because nitrogen is much less dense than RP-1, pump quickly started rotating much faster than it was designed for, causing itself to rupture and leak fuel, which, once it caught fire, quickly engulfed the rocket in flames. Launch abort system was then activated by ground control, pulling cosmonauts to safety just before rocket exploded on pad. After landing some 4 kilometers away from the raging fire, rescue team comforted them in a truly Russian way, with vodka and cigarettes. On June 11th, 1957, US Air Force attempted to launch their first Atlas rocket. Engines fired up, hold-down clamps released the rocket and it took off to the skies. Everything seemed to be going well until T+25 seconds when the rocket reached the altitude of around 3 kilometers. B2 engine on the booster lost its thrust, soon followed by B1, causing the rocket to tumble over and dramatically start disintegrating. It took launch officers a good couple seconds to trigger the launch termination system. Perhaps they just got hypnotized by the tumbling fireball that was once an Atlas rocket. What's funny though, even though the rocket failed to reach its target trajectory in a rather spectacular way, it was considered an overall success, and lessons learned from this failure aided future rocket development program, which eventually resulted in John Glenn reaching orbit on a very similar Atlas rocket. Couple years down the line, on March 2nd, 1965, another Atlas rocket was preparing for takeoff with a freshly designed upper stage, famous Centaur, which is one of the most reliable upper stages used in rocket business to this day. But it didn't really have a chance to prove itself that day because at T plus 0.88 seconds, the main engine suddenly shut off, bringing the rocket straight back down on the bat. Wow! Cause of this failure was tracked down to sudden main fuel valve closure, causing the engine to shut down prematurely. On June 4th, 1996, everyone at ESA, European Space Agency, was excited for the new heavy-lift launch vehicle, Ariane 5. All was looking nominal, and powered by a cryogenic first stage and two massive solid rocket boosters, the rocket took off from Guyana Space Center. Everything was going great, until things took a dramatic turn. Quite literally. At T plus 30 seconds, the rocket did a sudden 90-degree turn, and as the aerodynamic forces started ripping the vehicle apart, flight termination system was triggered. Bye-bye, Ariane. So how did this happen? Turns out, ESA was using components from previous rocket, Ariane 4, including flight computers, which led to a conflict between 64-bit and 16-bit systems on board, producing $300 million software error.
They made an automatic adjustment to the trajectory as the rocket was traveling at the speed of sound.
Yikes. On July 2nd, 2013, Roscosmos was preparing for a routine launch of their Proton M rocket on a mission to put new navigation satellites into orbit. And by routine, I really mean routine, because that was supposed to be 388 launch of a Proton rocket, so naturally everyone was expecting it to perform phenomenal. Hold my vodka, said the rocket, and as soon as it took off, it started going off course. Engine gimbals instantly turned to the other side to compensate for it, which didn't really help at this point. Now, you might think it would be a good time for an automatic flight termination system to fire off and disintegrate the rocket, but you see, there's a problem with Russians. They don't believe in flight termination systems. If you don't go to space, you gotta be spectacular at least. Bled. So what happened? Why did such a reliable rocket as Proton go down so horribly wrong? As determined by the post-flight investigation, one of angular velocity sensors was installed upside down, even though there is a giant arrow on it showing what direction should it point. I'll tell you a secret! Towards space! And because there was only one way to fit the sensor properly, it was hammered into place by some really dedicated Russian engineer. And that deserves a space facepalm! Spacepalm! And we made it to the number one. As the unwritten tradition of similar rankings goes, it has to go to the first launch attempt of the mighty N1 rocket. N1 was meant to take Soviet cosmonauts to the moon and be direct competitor for Saturn V. Was meant to, because it never reached orbit. N1 was an absolute mess of a rocket, built without testing key components, using dead-end solutions such as single-use pyrotechnic engine valves, which meant that engines could not be test-fired before launch. So the smart Soviet engineers said, hey, if we cannot test the ones we're going to fly, let's at least test the ones we don't use. But because they are so expensive, let's test one in every 6. That sounds like a fair number. I think you know where this is going, because testing a rocket engine this way is like saying, hey, my neighbor's fridge works fine, I reckon if I buy the same model it's going to work just as well. It was not fine for the N1. You see, if you think Falcon 9's 9 engine are a lot, or that Falcon Heavy's 27 is just an overkill, you haven't seen N1's first stage with 30 untested rocket engines. While still on the launch pad, one of the turbopumps just exploded, which led to the opposite engine shutting down to keep the balance. Then same happened to two other pairs of engines, and as the rocket was ascending, you could literally see on the footage rocket parts falling off. Lad, we don't need that anyway. Good excess mass is no excess mass. Okay, but what valuable lesson did Soviets learn from this one? Absolutely none. Explosion wreaked such havoc on the launch pad, it took 18 months to rebuild it. Then they flew N1 two more times. Still without testing critical components, still failing both times. Although not so spectacularly, and in the end it laid an end to the N1 and to Soviet dreams of the moon. And some even say the failure of N1 program has accelerated the fall of the USSR in general. But what do you think about it? Did fall of the N1 rocket had anything to do with the fall of USSR? Let me know in the comments below. And that will be it for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that like button and smash subscribe so you never miss another video. Also make sure to check out the other videos on my channel. There's quite a few of them already, so have a look. I am Alex and you are watching Doctor Gibberish. See you next time.